Okay, for our last speaker, it's a bit of a different format. We're having a fireside chat next to our fire, right there, big screen TV. Hopefully, I shouldn't have said that. That's on fire. Oh, okay, we got it. Okay, we are official. Dr. Joseph Williams is Director of Economic Development for Washington State's Information and Communication Technology sector, the ITC. A former executive with Microsoft and Sun Microsystems, Dr. Williams served as Dean of School of Business, Government, and Economics at Seattle Pacific University before joining Commerce. His distinguished career in tech industry, academia, and public sector include extensive experience with angel investing, software as a service companies, customers on the business models, and economics and cloud computing. He's also authored 3 books and dozens of articles in this industry.
So I'm actually really happy to have Dr. Joseph Williams with us today. In my talk earlier today, as I was looking through the risk criteria that I was creating, I found that personally, getting a handle on the technology-oriented risk and some of the business-oriented risks, I could find a lot of people who had given deep thoughts to those areas. But the one area I found absolutely baffling was the area of regulatory compliance, the legal aspects of the blockchain area, and specifically with respect to policy, right? And so that's the conversation that I intend to have with Dr. Williams, who has graciously agreed to let me call him Joseph for the course of this conversation. So welcome. So you have a very unique role within the state apparatus and with as an advisor to the governor. Can you help us understand what does the Director of Economic Development for ICT do and why that role exists?
Sure. So there's 5 of us. The governor created the role. There's 5 of us. Used to be 6 of us. And we're each assigned to a critical part of the state's economy. So you would imagine there's an aerospace person, which there is, a life sciences person, a military and defense person, a tech person, that's me. Forest products, maritime. We used to have ag, but that position went somewhere else. And our job is largely to take a look at what's happening in the economy and make sure we don't screw it up as a state. So tech is doing awesome. We added 12% jobs year over year in the last year, so I look awfully good. Gross business taxes are up about 11.8%, so we're the only sector besides agriculture that's anywhere near double digits. There are some sectors that are in bad shape. When Expedia took the Amgen property, that took a lot of wet lab space off the market. And so if you're in life sciences, we actually have a horrible shortage of wet lab space. And the life sciences sector lead's job was to notify the governor of that and work with legislators and city officials on trying to fix it, which we have not fixed, by the way. But we might come up with an R&D tax credit as one way to do that. The aerospace guy doesn't really spend a lot of time on Boeing because Boeing is well represented in the state, but we're trying to do everything we can to attract the rocket business here. So SpaceX, Vulcan, Blue Origin, we spend an enormous amount of time trying to attract them here. And then I'm also working with autonomous vehicles. So we saw a real opportunity with autonomous vehicles, and we're chasing after it big time. So,
excellent. I'm glad to know that we had technology representation in the state government.
Well, and in fact, tech is the largest part of the state's economy. We all go blah, blah, Boeing, but that's just blah, blah. It's actually software drives this state right now.
So I was reading your GeekWire Geek of the Month profile.
Geek of the Week.
Geek of the Week. Hey, I feel you should have been the Geek of the Month. But one thing really caught me in there was you mentioned that blockchain was going to be the technology focus of 2018.
Yeah.
And clearly that's relevant to us as an audience. But I'd love to hear how you came to that conclusion.
So, in my time at Sun and at Microsoft, I supported the financial services industry quite a bit. And the amount of friction that's in the financial services industry is enormous. The amount of friction in the pharmaceutical industry is enormous. So when you're looking at technologies that can take costs out, blockchain seems to have enormous potential. And I think back 2 years ago, when I first started doing some studies on this, we were talking about $95 billion worth of savings that we could achieve globally through blockchain, just in fintech and pharmaceuticals. That's pretty amazing.
That is an amazing amount of experience. You'd shared one statistic with me, which is on the screen behind us, and I wanted.
This is my shame statistic.
Yeah. So actually, I think this is also your call to action statistic,
Yes.
right? So as I was going through my journey of looking at blockchain and the blockchain economy in specific to the Pacific Northwest and Seattle, I had a lot of moments in which I found a new learning that made me go aha, and this was one of those moments. So what you're seeing behind you is a survey that was done by Deloitte, and insights that they shared. Of the top 10 areas within the world where blockchain technologies are being actively developed and projects are actively being contributed to. And as you can see over here, Seattle is at number 9. So help us understand this and help us understand where you would like it to be.
So anytime Paris is ahead of Seattle, that's a huge loss for us. So just to put it in context, there's no survey of anything that happens in the software world where Paris should finish ahead of us. So the fact that they're ahead of us is very disappointing. I worry about Austin. If you look at the top 5 cities we lose talent to, Austin is one of those 5. Yes, sir?
What are the metrics?
This is a good question. This is a weird study. This is projects registered in GitHub.
And that are actively being developed.
And so my argument has been we got shorted because Amazon and Microsoft don't register their projects in GitHub. I think we're 5. But anyway, in this project we're 9. Yes?
And is this metro area or city itself?
So when people talk about Seattle, they really mean the 10-kilometer radius around South Lake Union, which includes Bellevue and Redmond.
So San Francisco includes Silicon Valley then, or not?
No, in this particular survey, San Francisco actually goes only as far south as Redwood City.
Okay.
Excellent.
Which covers Oracle, but not. Yeah.
Bingo. And that's Deloitte's metrics, not how I would have done it.
No.
And so I pay a lot of attention to Austin because we lose talent there. Not a lot of talent, by the way. It's almost an equal balance of trade. This is no surprise. The Chinese are investing in a significant way. And I knew London would be at the top because I sit next to the UK trade representative and he's in my face constantly about how awesome they are on blockchain. But it makes sense. They're a major money center city. They're also headquarters for Europe's pharmaceutical industry. So you think about the kinds of things where London would lead. We're never going to catch San Francisco. There's just too much startup money there. So I don't pace against these two guys. This is really, number 3 is what I always shoot for. So we had an exchange earlier yesterday about, well, okay, what are we going to do about that? And that's my job. My job is to go to the legislature, to the universities, to the governor, and say, maybe we need an R&D tax credit. Maybe we need innovation center. Maybe we need, we have a little bit of problems with our money transfer rules here. Maybe we need to loosen up the money transfer rules, right? So that's what I do.
Right, and plus talent, right? I know that's another passion.
I'm not worried about talent. We have plenty of talent in this town. Actually, we pulled a big chunk of Overstock.com's blockchain group over here from Salt Lake City. We're seeing other blockchain groups coming in here. So we're a talent magnet. The bigger issue is this is not a large number of projects. And so I think the metrics just flawed because of Amazon and Microsoft.
Right. So in our previous conversations, you'd mentioned a few use cases that either the government or other agencies were considering using blockchains for, or at least evaluating blockchain technologies for. And I thought your take was just absolutely fascinating, because that's blockchain in the public sector is not something that I've given a lot of thought to. So if you could share that with the group here, that would be.
So the easiest one, I was just at Blockchain Expo on Friday, Thursday, whenever it was, and I was on a public policy panel. And voting is the easy one. I mean, voting is low-hanging fruit. You can think about the fact that we already trust the mail system for voting, even though it's pretty easy for your partner to vote on your behalf and send the ballot in and you just forget, that kind of stuff. Blockchain would actually give us a much higher confidence interval. You probably never think about it, but our overseas military citizens need to vote. They tend to vote via email. That is not the most secure way to vote. So blockchain would be a good way to do that. I predict that if we could do online voting with blockchain, we could get up to 75% turnout, which is a pretty amazing number. Blockchain would also allow you to change your vote. So if you vote early and then somebody screws up and you decide to unvote for them, you can use blockchain to actually change that. That's one. Two, we're an export economy. We export an astonishing amount of materials. Food safety is top of mind for us. And so we think we're very encouraging to Washington State University to do a lot of work on blockchain for food safety, and they're very interested in doing so. The other thing, we are a net exporter of energy. We're also a clean energy state. We can use the blockchain to validate our clean energy economy, and with some ownership issues that pop up and credits and things like that. So we're looking at that. And then, of course, there's the obvious things around title to things and licensing that can also be impacted by blockchain. That said, nobody has any affinity for it yet. Right. And so Snohomish County wants to be a smart county, and so I'm lobbying them to maybe be an early adopter. The CTO for the city of Seattle, Michael Mattmiller, he's got a smart city initiative underway. He just hired the smart city lead from Kansas City, so maybe he'll do something for the city with blockchain there. The bigger problems around blockchain, which we'll probably get to in a second, is blockchain's never gone through any kind of legal review. So we don't know what the law is around blockchain, and there's an assumption that it will fall under normal tort and contract law, but who knows? I mean, I just listened to a bunch of presentations making claims that blockchain's pretty awesome, pretty powerful, and does that change the contractual relationships?
Right, and I know that Navneet in his talk had mentioned the fact that the regulatory environment in different states is different, right? So what I'd love to hear about is what is the legal and policy environment for blockchain and blockchain-based businesses in our state, in the state of Washington?
So the state doesn't regulate blockchain at all. So you can do anything you want in blockchain. That said, the state provides you no protections either. And so we're aware of right now we have an estate that's trying to be resolved where somebody died and nobody knows how to get to his digital wallet, literally. And we think there's $1.5 million of crypto in the wallet, probably more than that now with the increase in the price of Bitcoin. And what do? I mean, how do you literally, all of you are scientists, or many of you are scientists, how do I get into that wallet? What if it's on a USB stick and I can't find the stick? We don't know. So, do you ever get those coins back? Somebody mentioned, I think it was you, that you lost your hard drive.
I did indeed.
What's the legal status of those coins? I mean, we think that there are some wallets that actually are converting coins that are abandoned to their own beneficial use. That's probably not supported by law. So that's a big issue. How do you recover that? Suppose I agree to buy a car from you for 4 Bitcoins. You transfer the 4 Bitcoins am I buying? Let's say I'm selling you the car. So you give me 4 Bitcoins for the car, I never gave you the car. So then you sue to recover the Bitcoins, and I say, good luck with that, because I'm not giving you the code. So what happens at that point? Yes?
How does that differ from cash?
It's with cash, I can convert assets in order to get the equivalency. With Bitcoin, I have no way to access the coin whatsoever. And I actually have met a gentleman from South Africa who owns nothing. He literally rents his apartment in New York. He rents his furniture. He doesn't own a car. He Ubers in town cars. He owns nothing. All of his assets are in his wallet, wherever his wallet is. And he believes that he's judgment proof. And it's a deliberate strategy on his part.
Yeah, you know, I was reading this morning that 13 to 17% of Bitcoins, which is basically somewhere between 3.5 million and 4.2 million Bitcoins, are essentially missing at this point.
Yes.
They've never been.
They're on someone's hard drive.
There's someone in his hard drive who had an unfortunate crash at some point.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. And then what's going to happen? Let's say you're in the minority on a hard fork. You're in the 49%. You think the fork is completely wrong, and you believe you've been damaged as a result of the fork, and you sue. We don't know what happens. There's absolutely no law here that covers any of this. And so I know on the last hard fork on Bitcoin, there were a lot of real unhappy people. None of them sued, so far as I know, but they could have. And then what would the courts do with that? And here's the crazy part. Imagine explaining blockchain to a jury in East Texas and how that's going to work out. Because that's what happens, right? They'll go forum shop, just like they do for intellectual property, and they'll find a forum where they either don't get it or they get it in one particular way, and then suddenly you get all kinds of weird case law coming out of the Southeast Texas jurisdiction. Yes?
So, challenge for you, how do you explain blockchain to a bunch of politicians in Olympia?
So the question, just repeating the question for people who weren't able to hear that, the question is, how do you explain blockchain to a group of politicians?
So the good news is the legislature is aware that this is a complex issue. They have one senator who has been running all over the country to all the public policy blockchain kinds of things. And if you actually want to meet that senator, I can help you with that. But he's going to be the blockchain expert. He sits on the Finance Committee of the Senate. And he gets it. He gets it pretty well. He's a young guy, millennial guy. So, you know, he kind of grew up in the right environment to understand this. I can tell you, as I talk to the other advisors of the governor and I try to explain what blockchain does, oh my gosh, you know, it's probably like back in the Renaissance when the Medicis were trying to explain double entry accounting, when everybody had been using those cuneiform clay tablets before that. So it's very, very difficult. We actually had a horrible thing happen in the last session. We beat it, but we had a bill introduced that would ban the use of crypto in cannabis. And the motivation behind that was the representatives' belief that crypto was untraceable. So it was, you know, obviously what hackers and criminals and ransomware people use, so it must be bad, so we need to ban it from cannabis. And in a very real way, crypto might be the solution for cannabis. It might be the solution for liquidity and traceability and all kinds of interesting things. So, and auditability.
Supply chain.
Exactly. Go talk to Wade and Ed if you want to learn more about that. But crypto has some very interesting upside. Also, we've been talking to some UW researchers also over at Bill and Melinda Gates. They think blockchain is going to revolutionize medical records, because right now you're either in the Epic or the Cerner system, and those records are not portable. And if you travel a lot, good luck with the portability of your medical records.
So are there any specific policies that you've encountered that you feel won't withstand the test of time today and will need to be revised?
Not in blockchain, because we haven't even seen any legislation proposed around blockchain. I think the state's money transfer rules are a little archaic. Now, I don't want anybody in the press quoting me on that, because I like the people in DFI. But you probably know we don't have a lot of exchanges here in the state of Washington, and there's some severe restrictions on the exchanges that we have. If you were brand new today and you wanted to buy a Bitcoin, I don't believe you could. I think you can buy about a 1/12 of a Bitcoin, but I don't think you can right out of the gate do that. We also don't have any rules around what certified investors look like in the digital currency. And then the thing that worries me the most, we do have taxes. So if you buy something using digital currency, we know how to collect the tax on that. We know how to collect the B&O tax on it. But if you actually convert Ethereum into Bitcoin and it becomes a taxable event, the federal government doesn't know what to do with that. They don't know if they're going to treat it like a 1031 property exchange, which is what the Justice Department seems to be suggesting, or whether you have to step up your basis immediately and pay taxes on the gain. So if you bought Bitcoin at 300, you sold it today at 10,000, what, 10.5 or 11.5? Is that what it was today? And you convert it into Ethereum, you should be recognizing a lot of profit, which should get taxed. But the feds haven't decided how they're going to do that yet. We don't tax capital gains here in the state of Washington, so not an issue for us. We also don't have income tax, as you hopefully all know, right? We just tax your revenue.
So, I mean, what aspects of risk from blockchain technologies keep you up at night, or do you think that should keep people who are...
So JP Morgan Chase worries me. Having a blockchain where it's not a complete chain worries me. The idea of a private blockchain that's not easily auditable worries me. We already have some orphans. There's some blockchains that have just died. Nobody's mining them anymore. Nobody's writing to them. They've just passed away. What do we do with those? Who has a property interest? What happens to what's recorded in it? So the motivation to write to a blockchain, I mean, we just had a presentation on, we're going to do 20,000 entries per second or something. That's great. What's the incentive system for that? What happens if there's not enough blockchain miners to actually do that? And so I worry about that. I mean,
which is exactly what I was, I call that the ghost town metaphor,
Yeah.
in which what happens when you become a ghost town, and where does residual value actually reside?
And I have a new worry since the Seahawks game. So I was at a party at the Seahawks game, and one of the guys there bought a Bitcoin mining machine from China for his kid, $2,000 for the machine, and the power to generate it is $55 a month. So the kid's going to learn capitalism, apparently, by being a Bitcoin miner. But the deal is that's $55 a month here in King County. If you went to Douglas County, where power is less than half the cost of here, that would be $25 a month. So we see a lot of Bitcoin miners, blockchain miners, moving to Douglas County, Chelan County, and Grant County. We don't control any of those. Those are all organized and regulated locally. Except for Douglas County, they've kind of decided they don't like blockchain miners anymore, and so they don't want them. And there's a reason for that. I mean, megawattage is a scarce resource, and they want jobs per megawatt. That's their metric. And but that's not really good for us. We've got French companies, Chinese companies, we've got money coming down from Canada, all making direct foreign investment in these communities. They pay property taxes, and they do have a couple of people there. So the net is we would either export the electricity to Portland, which not my favorite place to put anything, or we could use it locally in something that helps the local economy. And so it's a very complicated issue. Washington actually is very uniquely situated because we're a nonstop flight to China, which is where a lot of the investment is. We have cheap power. We have very good devs. We don't build equipment. Most of the equipment gets built in China, but we're the first port it comes to for offloading. So we have a lot of positives in this industry.
I certainly know at least one person in the audience, and I'm looking at you, Dan, who would be happy with that answer, since we were just having that conversation around the cross differential of in power units to mine bitcoins today. So for investors specifically, I mean, a lot of the audience over here is looking to either invest in new business ideas that will utilize blockchain. What are some of the risks that you think they should be concerned about, and do you have any thoughts on minimizing any of those risks for them?
Well, so I'm an economic development person. I'm not a regulator. I know the regulators are very concerned about ICOs. You cannot sell an ICO as having any kind of an equity interest. If you have your ICO, done by Perkins Coie or one of the big law firms, they give you all the right language to not use when you're doing your ICO. But then I see everybody using the wrong language outside of the legal documents. And so you've got to be very careful around the ICO subparts. And so that's not even an investor issue so much as it is, if you're going to issue an ICO or a token, you need to be really, really clean about it, because they may not come after you right away, but when they do come after you, you'll end up in jail. And that's a very bad thing. Or they'll tie your assets up in such a way that you'll end up functionally going out of business. So they're slow, but they're very powerful once they get there. And if you're an investor, of course, you have to pay attention. And I can't give you investment advice, but I can tell you, you need to pay attention to what you're investing in. I actually got asked to work with the governor on issuing a state coin, but I don't even know what that would mean. But it'd be a good way for us to raise revenue, I guess. We have to find $1 billion to balance the budget in the coming session, so.
Right. So an idea.
The Jay Inslee coin.
Yeah. the idea to keep in your back pocket when the recession hits.
Yeah.
So how do you see the future of blockchains actually evolving? Just from as a technologist, having spent time in academia, in large enterprises, and now with the state, how do you see this evolving? If
they can solve the transaction speed problem, I think blockchain will end up being an important way to change the way we distribute data. I think it'll have it'll be legal. We'll figure out what the laws are and the enforceability. I think blockchain could be a definitive way to represent assets. I just read this morning that the Republic of Georgia is actually almost all e-record blockchain based at this point, and it's actually led to economic growth. They're showing true economic growth relative to the other former Soviet republics, and they think it's attributable to blockchain. So some interesting things happen. Of course, you guys know Estonia does the same thing and has had some positive outcome from that. I'm looking for leadership from Amazon and Microsoft. Right now, they just want to play host and or give you a tool set, but they haven't actually put it into their products very much. So Mechanical Turk doesn't really have a blockchain option that I've seen. Azure has some tools for that, but I haven't seen anything that's been built into the Xbox or other products that they're actually offering. So I don't know if you know, is anybody here from Avalara? Avalara's got some research they're doing on blockchain for sales tax. They're a big sales tax software company here, so they're doing some interesting things. I expect Starbucks with their mobile payment system will do some very interesting things, but I just haven't seen it yet. So we hosted a blockchain summit with Perkins Coie a year ago, and we've seen a lot of movement since then, but we haven't seen phenomenal capital growth in the sector yet, and that's what we're looking for, and that's probably reflected in this small number.
Excellent. Well, with that, I'll open it up to the audience for questions.
You mentioned some use cases that you see the government getting involvement in. Do you think, if you were to predict, do you think they would go towards public blockchains, public permissionless like Ethereum, Bitcoin, or do you think they would only use some form of private government blockchains?
That's a great question. The state of Washington historically likes to have control. We're not even in the cloud. We run our own Exchange servers. We're not using Office 365. So my guess would be the state would lean toward some kind of private or governmental blockchain. I don't know. Our CIO just stepped down, so we have an interim CIO, and this is too big a decision for an interim. But if I had to bet, I'd bet it would be some kind of governmental blockchain that IBM or somebody creates and helps manage.
A FISMA compliant blockchain.
Probably, exactly.
Is that what you would want?
I don't think I'm smart enough to know which way I'd go on that. I mean, for government transparency, I would prefer to see a public blockchain. But we're not, the state's IT infrastructure is pretty good relative to how much we invest in it. We actually lowball our infrastructure. But I don't know that we'd ever have what I would call top of the supply chain blockchain talent. We'd probably have to rely too much on a vendor, and that hasn't proven to be always a good outcome for us. So I'd probably go public, if they can make it work. By the way, anybody know whether, I know Seattle U has a blockchain professor over in the finance department. Does anybody know if the other universities are doing anything? Washington State's going to have an energy blockchain person.
Well, I know that we have the UW blockchain club here. Do you guys have any insights into that over at UW?
No, we're just starting.
Are you in the Foster School or the computer science?
Me personally,
Yeah, the UW people.
just UW people in general, there's a lot. The leadership is mostly Foster,
Foster?
so we're really looking for people to know more about blockchain.
Yeah. Do you have a lead professor over there?
No, education for blockchain specifically is pretty scarce.
Okay. I should mention, because it's always good to promote them, we're very happy that Dragon Chain launched here. We're not always sure exactly what they're up to. Joe's not that forthcoming. But we're very happy that it launches here, and it does promote us in terms of having a viable product that's emerged locally.
So beyond products that are emerging locally, what community or industry organizations do you see as good partners for you over at ICT who've been supporting the blockchain ecosystem?
So I'm absolutely certain that Tsinghua University and the University of Washington through the GIX program will look at blockchain for food safety. I'm absolutely certain of that. I know it's coming. And given our economy, it makes a lot of sense. And then that applies to a lot of other supply chain problems that come up. One of the biggest things is when you import a mechanical device, it has to be disposed of at some point. There's hazardous materials in those devices. How do you know where they are and who owns them and who's responsible and whether the taxes have been remitted? China does a great job of tracking that. We do a terrible job. And blockchain could do a lot for us in that regard. And I think the GIX consortium is going to help a lot.
Right. Well, with that, I will end our session together. I really do appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. And this was very insightful for me personally. Thank you very much.
Government is not the enemy.
Well, thank you. Well, I have two quick announcements before we wrap up. One is, please don't turn your brain off just yet. All that we've just talked about over the past several hours, it's easy to go, okay, we're done with talking about that. Brief conversations I've had around the room with some of you, the attendees, has been, we're thinking about implementing blockchain, or we're not sure, we're here to learn, it's new. It was more nefarious. And what I wanted to try to continue to encourage while we have our time together here with people that are as interested as you about this is to continue the conversation. And our way of facilitating that is throughout the room, we're going to have 5 different subjects that we were asking people to try to congregate if you're interested in talking about that subject. So around the room at the different tables, we have these 5 subjects. Think about which one you might want to go stop by, talk to some people that have similar interests. Cryptocurrency, the Ethereum network, smart contracts, Hyperledger, and enterprise blockchain. So if one of those piqued your interest, I'd like to talk about others with others about that. Go find that placard that's going to be on the table. We are concluding the talks, but we have drinks and now we have snacks. Snack explosion happens now. We'll have more time just to hang out and enjoy the space. I did want to mention, we have a slide up here of what our next talk or our next summit is going to be, right here. April 12th, we're going to do this again. We're planning to do the summit at this summit in this building, this same space, in April, integrating application security at the speed of Agile. So if that's of interest of you or a colleague, forward this to them. Everyone here is going to get a copy of these slides. We'll be able to send those out to you. There's links here to go ahead and pre-register and forward those over to your friends and colleagues. So anything else, Joe? We good? Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot.